Ellis, when you look at this, who are some names to listen out for as that trade deadline comes upon us Tuesday?
Right. Well, let's start with positions, right? So let's identify, imagine being Andrew Barry. You look at your roster every morning, you're like, all right, where do we need help? Well, we just lost Odell Beckham Jr., so wide receiver may be a little thin. This team's been looking for linebackers since Barry took the job, really. So linebacker is still a question mark. And since the Delpit injury, there really hasn't been overall improved safety play. Ronnie Harrison has been playing well, but there's also been injuries. Carl Joseph banged up at times. And Sendejo, who stays on the field, it just keeps getting beat. So from receiver to linebacker to safety, I'll give you a few names. Will Fuller is one that's been floating around out there. The Texans are going nowhere, and he's going to be a free agent next year. So perhaps the Texans can get some picks back that they don't have, frankly, after the whole Bill O'Brien fiasco, trading away with some, seems like all their farmhouse picks there. And they might want to get some back there, and the Browns need a guy who stretches the field in a way Will Fuller does. All that guy does is score touchdowns, but he's banged up a lot. So that's one name to watch. Miles Jack, linebacker in Jacksonville. The Jags are willing to get rid of their young assets, whether it was Jalen Ramsey a few years ago, and the Browns got Ronnie Harrison from him before the season started. So that's a name that is you can watch who may, whether it's the Browns or not, may be moved in general. And then the Vikings and the Browns have this long-term connection rooted from 16 years of Kevin Stefanski being in Minnesota. And they've got a safety named Anthony Harris who is playing on the franchise tag. And he doesn't seem like the Vikings have much plans to sign him long-term, and their season is going nowhere. And that could be a piece that could help the Browns fill a void that could get Sendejo off the field and maybe make up for this Delpit injury. So I think those are the positions to watch. And then specifically, those are three names that would make sense in Cleveland if this was Madden. And I figure we're probably going to get to what that means a little bit.
Yeah, you acquire Harrison and you can't just acquire a guy and plug him in and say, hey, go play in our system. So is there some, because Stefanski knows the Vikings and knows the personnel there, he probably has a little bit better feel for who might fit. Do you think that makes them a more likely trade partner?
It does. I would say if there was any one trade that I would put a favorite on, it would be anything involving the Vikings. Again, just with a familiarity there. Sendejo came over from Minnesota and hasn't come off the field. But I will say this. I think that, there's what the Vikings did last year and what Joe Woods' defense is doing this year is not the same. So regardless, Anthony Harris would have to come in and learn a new system. We saw how long it took Ronnie Harrison to get on the field. And that now seems like it just was a scheme thing and him picking up the defense. And that's what makes this difficult. You're halfway through your season and you're going to bring in guys who need to pick something up on the fly for a year in which you're not knowing you're not going to win the Super Bowl, and guys that want contracts. You make these trades, you're essentially guaranteeing them money because signing someone or trading for someone on a half-year rental doesn't make sense for any team that isn't competing for a Super Bowl this season.
Do you get a sense that the Browns might be willing to do that? And when you talk about those guys, I'm guessing 5th, 6th, 7th round draft pick is probably what you're looking at as compensation in a trade?
Yeah, so the Browns got an extra 3rd and 4th and things like that. And you're right, it could be lower. That would be the asking price, but I'm just hesitant because it's this front office is in no rush to spend their money. They're going to be real safe under the cap next season. They've been safe with the cap this whole year. I think second most available money in the league, only to the New England Patriots, who had about 8 guys not play because of COVID. And I think this front office would like to remain flexible going forward rather than tying up, say, 12, 13 million to a linebacker like Miles Jack, or 10, 11, 12 million to a safety, in which they have a rookie safety coming back next year, most likely, in Grant Delpit, that they want to see what they got there. So I just don't see the urgency in gaining a defensive player, even though that's where they need the most help. Because of the body count, I think they need a receiver most, depending on what Donovan Peoples-Jones can be. But I'll say this, once Austin Hooper's back healthy, I suspect Harrison Bryant will be used as he was early in the year, a tight end / receiver, and this Browns offense will be a two tight end, Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins, top of their lineup type team, rather than bringing in a new player to now learn a new offense and whatnot. So I think that there are things the Browns are exploring, but whether it's a lack of desire to commit money on the defensive side or them being content with the young pieces they have offensively, I don't anticipate a match happening.
Is it a matter of the defense is kind of what it is, and they realized this was going to be the year where if we're going to win, we're just going to have to outscore people?
Yeah, outscore people and create turnovers, like you said. And I think they are at peace with what this defense is. I think that they're excited that Ronnie Harrison is developing into every down player for them. That touchdown saving tackle on Tyler Boyd last week was really as impressive as it gets at safety. I thought he was scoring, and somehow Ronnie grabbed him. He's graded out in the high 70s and 80s these past 2 weeks on PFF. And I just mentioned Grant Delpit. So, that when you're thinking, when Andrew Berry sits in his office, you think 1 foot in the door of today and 1 foot in the future, and they can play the long game here. There's no rush necessarily. And as for the rest of the secondary, Denzel Ward had a great game yesterday and is now becoming, Joe Woods talked about him today as a player that potentially he feels comfortable shutting down a side of the field. So they're going to let these young guys develop and not feel a sense of rush or urgency to bring in someone and tie up a bunch of their cap when, the NFL doesn't know what the cap's going to look like next season. And remaining flexible gives you the best opportunities come draft day and stuff like that when Andrew Berry might be more aggressive making a deal.